Welcome to episode 52 of the Hoop Threads podcast. Here doing a recruiting roundtable with some esteemed college coaches. First, we'll go around real quick and introduce ourselves, where we coach at and our names. So we'll start with the veteran of the group, Coach Jones.
Thank you, Aaron, for having me on here. My name is Stan Jones. I'm the associate head basketball coach at Florida State University, in the middle of starting our 20th season at Florida State.
Yes, sir. Mo?
Hi, I'm Mo Kearney. I'm the associate head coach at a medium-sized Division III school located in Central New York, up near Syracuse, and I'm going on my 8th year on staff. I'm also a SUNY Cortland alum, so going on 12 years with the program.
He's been around for quite some time. We'll start with the first question here. So what sold you on your college choice? Was there anything that you would prioritize differently, kind of knowing what you know now? We'll start with Coach Jones.
You're talking about me as a student athlete?
Yes, sir.
My choice was probably the least interesting here of this group will be because I was a walk-on. So I went to my local, where I grew up in the city of Memphis. It was Memphis State University at the time. Made the back then they had the JV squads, and I made the team through a tryout process of about 85 guys. They kept 7 or 8 guys to be part of that program to work with the varsity, and so that choice was kind of being a guy graduating right after Memphis State had played in the Final Four in the final game in 1973, and kind of being a fan of the program, and being kind of a homebody, and I ended up getting both of my degrees there and started coaching high school basketball in the city of Memphis. So that's how my college playing career started. I was not recruited at all.
Got you. Mo?
Hey, Coach Jones, I'm right there with you, man. For me, I was a first-generation student, so first person in my family to actually graduate from a 4-year institution. So college wasn't really talked about in my household a lot. My high school coach, like others, was a mentor to me. He was my phys ed teacher as well, and so I was a senior, and he's like, yo, you're a senior. What's next? I didn't start playing organized basketball until about 10th grade, so I was a super late bloomer, but I was okay. And he kind of laid some options out for me for a couple of schools in the state of New York for phys ed. I didn't do any research as I was supposed to do, like a 17, 18-year-old. I called some friends up. They told me some good things about Cortland, and, they kind of had like a little tryout process, got in touch with the coaching staff, and here I am 12 years later.
Worked out. All right, we'll move on to the next one. So talk about the process of, in recruiting, identifying the decision maker while also connecting with the athlete and the rest of their circle. If the decision maker is the dad, you can't completely ignore building a relationship with the others. So talk about that balancing act when it comes to your time, in your communication with the families. Coach Jones, go ahead.
Well, I've been very, very fortunate. I've worked for 2 college head coaches, obviously Leonard Hamilton this is my 26th year working for Coach Hamilton, and I was with Rick Stansberry at Mississippi State for 1 year. And both of those guys are absolute geniuses on figuring out who the key person is in every recruiting process. Coach Hamilton's just got such a unique gift for it. He also, as you're talking to young coaches out here and stuff, he's always had the ability to even figure out who has the biggest voice in an athletic department. As he's been a head coach, he kind of really identifies who the person is who really calls the shots behind the scenes. It may not be the AD or the president, but there's somebody on campus in the booster situation, in the alumni situation that has a voice that matters, and coach picks those people out, and those people become his friends within a week to 2 weeks of him taking the job. That those are the people he connects with all the time, and he's also a genius on being able to tie everybody in the group. And so I've learned from him over my 26 years of don't leave anything to chance. Make sure you give up most of your time to the person who has the biggest voice, but always make sure you give attention to the people who could hurt you, even though they may not be able to help you. So we work very, very hard on connecting all the circle and trying not to leave any holes or any gaps in the recruiting effort, so that we don't make a mistake by leaving somebody out who keeps us from getting that kid.
Gotcha. Mo?
Yeah, I just learned a thing or two from Coach Jones. I appreciate you giving that. But for me, obviously it's different for me at the Division III level because like our guys in our program, they're playing the sport for the love and the passion in the game because there's no athletic scholarship involved. So, they're paying full tilt. So for me, when it comes to the recruiting, I'm really big on building that prospective student athlete, but it really comes down to typically mom and dad is going to be the one that's paying that bill. So no matter how much a kid may like Cortland, mom and dad has to be the one to kind of somewhat sign off on it. In my 8 years of doing this, I've come across families where it was 100% given to that student athlete of deciding where they wanted to attend, and if it made sense, the mom and dad would sign off, and it was okay. Typically, those families were very, very financially stable. I've come across certain families and kids where the dollar amount had to make sense, and it had to make sense for the student who may have been the one signing off and taking out loans, or the parents who were the one that actually had to pay the tuition. So I've come to learn to build really, really tight relationships with the parents, and me working in admissions have helped sell that because I can give you all the facts and the numbers and the statistics that the parents care about, that sometimes that student athletes may not seem so important. So for me, I would say building relationships with the parents, the high school coach. If that player is very deeply involved with the AU program, let's say the same program that they played for throughout high school or even middle school and continue to play on, I've tried to build relationships with those people as well that may have an influence on the decision-making process when the time came.
Got you. So the next question.
Aaron, I could piggyback on that a little bit. I can give you some examples of some recent recruiting. Just thinking as Coach was talking there, went through some recent recruiting things in the last couple of years. There was one kid we recruited that we had to make sure we involved the grandfather on both sides, the grandmother on one side, the father who was playing professionally overseas, who was not with the mother anymore, the mother, the stepdad, the AAU coach, the high school coach, and actually the one young man in the process that the kid talked to the most, but really wasn't being the shot caller, but the kid confided in him, was the assistant coach at the high school. And then there was a godfather that lived in a whole nother town. And so we had to spend time with all those people to make sure that they felt comfortable about who we were and what we were about. And then on the other side, there's a young man we recruited in the not too distant past that, like Coach said, all we had to do was talk to the mom and the dad. There wasn't an AAU coach we ever called. The high school coach we called out of respect before we came to town. But the mom and dad were actually both had been in athletics. One coached volleyball, one coached basketball at the college level. And so it was mom and dad and their son, and they made their decision as a family unit. So there's never any science to what we do. It's an art. And a lot of young coaches that are trying to get in this don't realize that they think they get one or two people, but you got to make sure you do like an investigative reporter and make sure you find everybody, because it could be a small circle and it could be a really, really large circle. And that's the key for how long you're going to stay in the business, is your ability to identify which one is which one in each different kid's case.
Yeah. I mean, just following up on that too, was that a much easier process for you as a coach to kind of navigate because you only had to, communicate with those two parents, or, was it really unlike, it was pretty similar to the regular process as far as, the frustration from the coaches as far as trying to get on the same page with everyone?
Well, it wasn't easier. It's never easier to get somebody to say yes. You got to really work at it. You've got to be a genuine salesman to let people see what's the opportunity for them. As I tell everybody I talk to in recruiting circles, everybody listens to one radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me? So you have to be able to explain to them, mom, dad, the kid, if they come here, how's this going to look when they finish it? So you still have that time, but when you have a bigger circle, you have to spend the same amount of time. So the amount of man hours is much longer in the bigger circle than the smaller circle, but the work's still the same.
Got you. Okay. Yeah. Love that. Let's move on to the next part, and this is a hot topic in college basketball right now. The NIL rules. Kind of talk about, this isn't really as much of a conversation for Mo, but how does the new NIL rules change your sales pitch, your recruiting pitch rather, to the kid? How have you kind of attacked that in this first recruiting cycle since that rule came into place?
Well, it can be a really slippery slope because it's such a fluid and moving target. Everybody really doesn't know what all the rules are because every state has come up with different legislation. Some states have no legislation. The NCAA has kind of stepped back and has very little voice in the situation. So you have to be able to not just know what the NCAA would want or allow in kids' eligibility, but you also got to know what your state laws are. We have a law in place in the state of Florida that has very specific rules about what the college administrations, employees, and coaches can do. We're not supposed to really be involved in any part of it. This is supposed to be something that the kids, their family, and if they hire representation, are to do that on their own. All they're supposed to do at the university is to report what they do to make sure there's no eligibility issues. So that's a little bit more difficult for us. Now, the one thing Florida State's been very, very proactive on since we saw it coming down the pipe about a year ago is we built in curriculum into a kid's graduation step-by-step map he would go through. So we actually have two classes that we have our kids. One's a freshman level class, one's a more upper division class, but it can be taken anytime and it counts toward as a degree applicable. It's not something they're taking just to waste more time about all the issues that go in NIL about contract.
Got you. Mo, do you have any comments on that?
No, I've just been, obviously at our level, it's something that we don't really deal with for the most part. Like we've actually had one kid over the summer, quote unquote, sign like an NIL deal with a clothing company for, he basically gets some free clothes and as long as he, wears it and posts it on his Instagram story. But, at our level, we really don't, we don't see it. I wouldn't actually mind if some of our local, Aaron, like Grab Tags and Bricks and maybe kind of got involved a little bit, maybe with some of our, well-known, like a kid like Austin Grunder, being our best player, one of the best players in the East region, especially for Division III, and also being a local kid. I think, there was probably maybe some opportunities for him. And we, he kind of talked about it with some other individuals. But I just think, looking from the outside looking in, it's like Coach Jones said, it's a slippery slope. And I think it's still so brand new that everyone really doesn't know how to navigate it. And this thing could look completely different, 6 months from now or even a year or two.
Absolutely. All right. So we have Leonard Fairley joining in from Norfolk State. What's up, Lenny? How are you, man?
Doing well. I apologize for my tardiness, but practice went over. So
hey man, the main thing, priorities, it's all good. So I want to circle back on two questions real quick and then we'll keep moving forward. So talk about the process of identifying the decision maker while connecting with the athlete and the rest of the circle in the recruiting process. You don't want to leave the mom out if you've kind of identified that the dad is the main source, but you do have to allocate your time. Time is precious, for coaches at the college level. So kind of talk about what you've learned in that respect.
So one thing I've learned, probably more so from my oldest assistant, Coach Jamal Brown, who's been coaching for about 22 years, I would say, Division I level. He always uses a concept called building a fence. So building a fence is like not just you find a primary decision maker, obviously, like whether it's one parent, both parents, high school coach, AAU coach, but then in a sense you also identify others that have influence, like no matter how small or big. Like he's an example, like say a kid is local, a kid goes to a certain barbershop all the time. Well, maybe you go in there a couple times. You talk about the kid. Now it's like you go there, you might go somewhere else the kid's at. And then all of a sudden now their regular conversations with those people, you come up. And it's just something that just keeps getting like, kind of drilled into the head about, yeah, these guys think highly of you. They really want you. They say this about you, that about you. And it's like you almost get more people on your side that can, in a sense, help win them over. Like, I mean, for us, with these local guys, because of our other assistant Carlton Clemens being so tied in, it's like the amount of people he touches, even before we even identify a kid, allows, like, we get a kid, like, for example, the one I was just in here, Joe Bryant, it's people all over, from his high school coach, his AAU coach, to just, you know, different local people in the circle that just are able to help push him in our direction. So I think that's a big process for us. With transfers, it's a little trickier. Because, you know, it's a shortened time span, but at the same time, you can still apply it. You just got to do a little digging. A little digging in a short bit of time. So
got you.
One of the things I've learned since, you know, starting out.
Got to build that organically. I like that, but you also have to make it happen. So talk about, how do I put this? So the NIL rules are a big thing in college sports nowadays, kind of changed the landscape in a lot of different ways, creating opportunities for young student athletes. So talk about, you know, how that's affected, you know, your pitch at Norfolk State, and kind of what, you know, how that's been for you this in this first cycle of, you know, having to deal with the NIL stuff. You know, it's a very fluid thing with the NCAA right now.
So with us, I mean, with us, it's a lot of researching in our own aspect, like trying to figure it out ourselves. So just different ways that you can apply it and finding the right people that can fund it. You know, you just see different things around the country, whether it's, you know, what happened with BYU with all the walk-ons or so on and so forth. So it's understanding that. Now, a couple of our guys have, you know, tried to do a few things with it. Biggest one being our African player, Euro Sidibe. He's been pouring a lot into a camp in his homeland in Senegal, African Next Gen Camp. Basically doing it for like his community, like some of the lesser, you know, I won't say impoverished, but some that have less. Last summer, you know, he's collecting a lot of old shoes from everybody, so he was able to supply those, so they had something to wear. They did a back to school drive recently, so it's been something he's taking his NIL and, you know, using his likeness, and just for there, even though he's not like a standout or a star player, just the fact that he was able to get to a Division I university and touch the floor, you know, stands out back there as, you know, somebody that made it basically. So he's kind of using that influence and, you know, being able to put his name on it and such, so on and so forth to advance things with that. So that's one of the big things that I've seen. And I've seen a few different athletes throughout the country that have used their NIL for something outside of themselves. And I think that's a really dope thing that's come out of this, that they're able to do that now.
Absolutely. I mean, and I'm glad you touched on that, because I think, you know, college student athletes coming back to their hometown and having a camp, you know, I know Jeremy Roach at Paul VI came back and did a camp, you know, there for kids, you know, in conjunction, I'm sure, with Nike and some stuff to make that happen, you know, provide backpacks and some other things, you know, as well as some training, you know, with them one-on-one for that day. I think that that's something that's going to be a lot more prevalent as we kind of get used to seeing how these rules, you know, change or stay the same, and, you know, becomes a part of our game for both sides. So, and that's a great way, like you said, to give back to the community that they come from as well. So this next question is for really anyone. What needs to be emphasized more heavily in recruiting, you know, by recruits, parents, you know, coaches, any of the above? You can take this one first, Lenny.
For me, I'd say what needs to emphasize more. I mean, we talk about fit all the time, but I think emphasizing how kids carry themselves, like how they carry themselves, and not just in a cliche manner, because, you know, you see all the tweets about, yeah, kids does X, Y, and Z, we're not going to recruit them, this, that, and the third. But in reality, if we're being realistic, like when we look around the landscape of college basketball, there are some guys that are a little wild, but they do so much that it's like you almost try to take the trade off. But how you carry yourself, like in general, like how you speak to people, respect, how you carry situations, you know, how you communicate, interact, like all those things. Like, I think seeing that from your first stop, I mean, well, not from your first stop, but from your schools that you're looking at, but also exuding that as well. And parents, the same thing. Like, we talk about kids all the time, bad kids on. Some parents are crazy too. I mean, like, parents are crazy too.
Yeah.
Like they think they can really influence things once a kid gets there. And no, like you gotta let coaches do their job. You gotta just step back. Like
It's levels to it. It's much different at the college level. Mo, you got some for this, and then we'll go to Coach Jones after that.
Yeah, I think for me, Coach talked about it a little bit. He said fit, and that's something that for me at my level, at the Division III level, is that what I always try to emphasize more when talking to parents, and especially for the ones that, let's be honest. For the most part, everyone thinks they're a scholarship player, so it's a little bit more difficult for me to try to identify those kids. And I tell parents all the time, the teams that win in our league have guys that are full of capable Division II type of players. So, don't take it as a negative that I'm recruiting your son coming from a Division III institution. I'm recruiting your son because I think if he attends SUNY Cortland, it's the best fit for him, not only on the basketball court, but academically, personally, socially. I think you can kind of put all those things together. So I think at my level, at the Division III level, fit needs to be emphasized a lot more instead of looking at, Division III, Division II, what can you give me? Can you give me a partial? Oh, no, I think I'm a full scholarship Division I player.
Coach Jones, what needs to be emphasized more heavily in recruiting, for recruits, parents, or coaches?
I think there's one big word for me, and it kind of piggybacks on what Coach Fairley was talking about, is reality. Reality needs to be addressed a lot more, because we've created almost a climate of delusionment that the only way a kid's going to make it is being an athlete that's going to make gobs of money, and that's the only way they can make it in life. There's not enough parents and kids and even coaches that talk, and we have to deal with it because we've had a lot of NBA guys come off our rosters in the last 5 or 6 years. So people want to talk about that all the time. But I try to talk about in the recruiting process, you also got to incorporate the long play. Everybody wants to talk about the short play, but I talk to every time we have older players come back that either we coached or even way before we coached at Florida State, or because we're big on honoring those guys. I always talk to what was the biggest advantage of you going to college, and these are guys that play pros, and they'll always come back and say access. I had access to this, that network, and that kind of stuff. And we don't talk about that. And I think this is what bothers me a little bit. Not about trying to keep people from making money. I think NIL is going to help us some of that with the college game, but everybody trying to speed these kids along in the professional things with the G League and the overtime elite. We're going to create a generation of very emotionally and maturity regressed young men that aren't going to know how to function when they're 35, 45, and 55 years old. Because I think that's really, really important. I think we're losing the crux of that in athletics, that these kids are still having to develop inside themselves socially, emotionally, spiritually. And even though we all made dumb mistakes when we were in college and everything, it gives you a place to make some mistakes, and you can survive from it because people are surrounding you and people are mentoring you and spending time with you, because college is going to be the last stop anybody does that for you. If they go to play professionally or you go out in the work world, man, it's a dog eat dog world, and everybody's wearing milk bone underwear. Man, they're trying to get that thing off of them. If we don't start helping parents understand that this is a bigger picture than just how fast can you get our son to the NBA, what's your track record on pro players, I'm not sure we're doing our jobs, as that old saying about being the village, and coaches being very strong leaders in the village of helping young people grow into young men. And my dad was a pastor, and sometimes I kind of look at this as my ministry, and I kind of get on that. But I think it's helped us recruit the kind of players that we actually enjoy coaching. They're not all perfect, but they've enjoyed us because their parents and their selves want us to help mentor them and help them grow, and for us to pour our lives into them and our wisdom and experiences into them. And I think that's carried over into our guys translating into being opportunities at the pro level, and most of them are thriving in their pro level opportunities right now because I think they're mentally and emotionally more ready for it.
Yeah, love that. So let's talk about visits. What you've learned as far as like maybe part of your speech to cut out as you're taking them through campus, or what parts of the campus you should bring them to, how that changes depending on the student athlete and their needs. Maybe if they're looking at, IT, going after that major, you bring them to, that part of the campus, and maybe do a different part if they're interested in studying something differently. What should parents expect? What questions should they ask on visits? Let's talk about visits real quick. Whoever's ready can take that one.
I guess I'll lead again. So, I mean, obviously you would want to take, if you know a kid's major, what they're trying to do, aside from basketball, or even in basketball, honestly, like you focus in that area. Like for us, one thing that helps us, we get kids interested in the business department. Dean Carrington actually played a long time ago, has a heavy interest in the program. So he always sits our guys down and talks to them, like recruits them down and talks to them or whatever. So for us, I think, well, not for us, but for parents, I think things that are interesting to me is just like general college questions, honestly, like as detailed as possible, like, because they're going to be away from home, and you do want to understand like the climate of what's going on. I mean, even the things it's not really, I don't think it's really anything taboo. I think you need to, when you ask questions though, don't just ask, coaches or your authority figures. If you have, other students around, because they're going to give you that perspective that, that's who they're going to be, their peers. That gives them a better understanding of what university life is. And you can also see like what the campus is advanced from. Like you can see where the growth is going. Is it stagnant or things of that nature? So those are kind of things I like noticed like throughout the time on visits, as I did as a student manager and even been a part of now.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm gonna just kind of piggyback a little bit. When parents and prospective student athletes visit campus, I try not to let them leave unturned. Like I want you to get as much out of the visit as possible. Ask any questions regarding academic. Obviously, if you're interested in sport management, as a coach, you would hope to have a faculty member within the department that you feel comfortable that you can bring in front of this, this kid's parents and this kid to kind of, really sell the department and the school. And like Coach Jones mentioned, the long term, right? If I come to Cortland and I'm majoring in sport management, how is my son going to benefit from getting this degree, down the line once he graduates? So that's the biggest thing. And I've learned in my 8 years coaching at Cortland that, some of the best recruiters are your current, right? Because just a day trip.
Well, you broke up a little
let
bit
them
there.
go out and have lunch with.
You broke up a little bit.
If it's just a day trip, I've learned that some of our best recruiting efforts is letting our recruits spend time with our current players and having lunch, and not letting me be around and the parents be around, and let them ask real life questions. How is Coach Mo? How is Coach Spanbauer? How is Cortland really as a student athlete? What are your experiences? And I usually will go somewhere else with the parents just to give them some alone time to kind of really fill each other out. And I've really learned that to be super, super beneficial. Also, I think we're spoiled in the fact that we have a president that's very, very active and loving and athletic. So if there's a kid that we really, really want, setting up a meeting with the president of our college with that prospective student athlete and his parents have gone a long, long way.
Bitterbaum's the man. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Coach Jones.
Well, Coach Hamilton's one of those. He has a mind that never stops thinking. His ideas go relentlessly, and so he's thinking about everything before every visit. I know when I first joined him at the University of Miami back in the late 90s, and Miami can be intimidating to some families if they're coming from small town areas and stuff. So he had the streets mapped out that we should, if we're coming from the airport to campus, if we're going to the restaurant for dinner, that we only drive down these streets, so all they see is nice neighborhoods, and everything looks, like Miami, the weather and all that kind of stuff. Because we use this phrase all the time: people buy with their eyes. They can make a decision just by looking at how nice something looks, or how bad something looks, or how unkept something looks. We had visits in this weekend. I had to get on our managers. We have a little tailgate, football games. And two of the moms were wiping off their chair. And I'm looking at the managers. I'm saying, dudes, y'all got to notice these things. Y'all need to wipe all these things. Now, parents, my moms are looking at those kind of things. If y'all want to be coaches one day, you have to understand this. So we try to incorporate some stuff. So after we start our visit on a Friday morning, the first thing on campus, coach wants to put them in a situation where there's a kind of a wow factor, whether it's a video presentation, whether it's facilities, whatever it is, when they're kind of looking around saying, man, I can see myself here. They're looking around at that kind of deal. And then the second thing he always talks about is mom's going to want to know where their baby's going to sleep and where they're going to eat. And so we immediately see where they're going to stay, what the meal plan situations are going to be, where the cafeterias look like, campus tour at that moment on a golf cart, taking our time with it and letting mom take her time to soak it all in and see. And so she feels comfortable how we live, how we eat, how we function day to day on campus. And then we go through the remainder of our visit with the business side of things. And I agree with both of the other coaches. I think the key for the programs that recruit really well is that they're involved on their campus. When you're involved with other parts of your campus where the academic people know you and like you, where you go and meet professors and administrators in the different colleges, especially the ones that most likely are going to have your student athletes in their programs, and you get to find out who the people are that have dynamic personalities, and they come to your games. So there's going to be a little bit of a buy-in factor and a believe-in factor for them in your program. Then you really know who to put your recruits and their families in front of, whether you go to their office or they come to your facility. So I think knowing those people and getting out and being seen and having those relationships really, really matter in families, knowing if you're genuine or not. Because it's not hard for them to tell if this is just a made-up, facade they're trying to put up to look good because they know other schools have done it. When they can tell if there's a sincerity and a genuineness about what the program's about. And then the last thing I say is like what Coach Mo said, if you haven't recruited your own players very well, and you don't continue to coach them and love them and recruit them while they're there and help them develop. We were in a recruiting situation not too long ago where it's down to two schools, us and another school. And the recruit, when he was out with our players, he said, and I'm coming here because the other school he went to, said, I don't think the players even liked each other. I'm not sure they liked the coaches. And you guys seem to really like being around each other all the time. And so if you're not building that and you're not fostering that in your program, that can be the landmine that blows up your whole. You could have been recruiting a kid for 2 years, and one comment by a disgruntled player can blow up the whole situation in 5 seconds, figuratively. And so making sure you continue to keep great relationships with your own team is very, very important in the success of your visits.
That leads perfectly into my next question. I think it was Steve Lavin that I was listening to speak earlier this week. He was talking about building a program with transfers. It's really hard to do. You can't build a program and culture with a lot of freshmen and transfers. Talk about balancing those team priorities and recruitment, and how you're able to keep recruiting the guys on your roster when you're bringing in a guy at the same position, or a guy that you think could cut into his minutes. That's obviously something that isn't really a pleasant conversation sometimes, but it's a conversation you need to have. So Lenny.
Well, for us, it's actually been a very interesting ride with this portal. So after 18-19, we won regular season title, beat Alabama, right, in the NIT. So it's a big year. We lost 4 guys right after. And it was like, and I was like, what? But one of them wanted to go close to home. Another one was worried about somebody coming in. And then the other 2 were freshmen that couldn't wait. So, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's the climate we're in. You got to be prepared, for things like that to happen. So we come into the next year basically with those 4 gone and a couple others that with 4 or 5 that graduated. So we had damn near a whole new team, really. And we were still able to have some success the next year, really competed, finished top of the league, did pretty okay in non-conference. But thing is, culture wins. Culture always wins, always. And if you got returners that's people at the top that are going to carry that culture over, you're going to get those new guys that come in are going to buy in at some point. Because if it's not just your coaches that go in it and you got your leaders as players doing it, it helps a ton. And one of guys that's actually joined us as an assistant, he had to do that on 2 occasions. So I think that's the big thing. The other part is like not just identifying players that can play, but trying to identify traits within players. Like, and you got to understand what you're dealing with. Sometimes it's hard. Like sometimes you get them and they're different than when you imagine, honestly. Like going through that and early, you try to identify early what that flat tire may be. That's not a physical thing. And also try to avoid the cancers. But it's like taking chances. You got to take risks too, occasionally at our level, especially just to get those kind of players. So you got to have calculated risk. You got to understand, all right, this kid had this issue at his prior stop, but is it deal withable? Is it a chronic thing or it's just a one-time incident?
Gotcha.
We had a first team All-MEAC guy. He had a situation in St. Louis. I ain't going to really divulge details of it, but the incident happened and you look at it like, eee. But the kid is one of the nicest, most respectful kids you'll ever meet. Like you would introduce him to anybody, a CEO, a parent, like he's that great. So it's like understanding those things. Then you got some kids that everything lines up and then you talk to that one coach or that one person in the past, they say they did X, Y, and Z, don't deal with them. So sometimes you gotta also, when you talk to for people that have coached the kid or know the kid, differentiate if they're actually being honest with you or they just got a vendetta. Because sometimes they're being honest.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're telling you it's a messed up kid and it might be a messed up kid.
Yeah.
So you want to get people that will come into your culture that aren't going to like resist it too much. Gotcha. And I think if you can have a strong carryover in your culture with the players that's returning, the newcomers will eventually come along and then they'll be able to carry it over. And you got to have your older players when they come back to continue hammering it home. Like Coach Jones said in the last question, just the experience and, what they say matters. Like if you got, for us, for example, we have Kyle come back and talk all the time as a former NBA player. But then we also have guys that have been first team All-MEAC guys, 1,000-point scorers that'll come back around and they'll say some of the same things. And it's just like, guys are getting it from different aspects and see, all right, this is what I got to do to be successful. We'll even bring back guys that transferred. So, that transferred into the program and they talk about their experiences. So just carrying it over and you can maintain and have some success year after year.
Got you. Mo?
We haven't been too successful with transfers for the most part. And my head coach, he doesn't really deal with transfers that often, just because I think, in his 27 years at Portland, I believe he had some transfers at early stages that have come with a lot of baggage. And so I think he kind of just doesn't deal with it. But for me, since I've been on his staff, we've been a little bit digging into the transfer market a little bit more. And it really comes down to, me doing my due diligence and trying to do my research and find out who these players are as people. Because I think that's very big in the sense of, okay, you're a pretty skilled basketball player, but do you have the character traits that are going to come in our program and mesh with the guys and the culture that, that we have that makes us successful? We throw a phrase out that we've been able to kind of say the last, 6-7 years, that culture doesn't graduate. And that's the fact that, our guys that have come up, and it goes back to Aaron, right? Even when I was, my junior and senior year, like think of the guys that, I was seniors and juniors with, and we were able to take those underclassmen under our wing. And then those underclassmen does the same thing with those younger guys. And it's just we've been blessed to have it be a revolving door where our culture has just been really, really good. So we do a lot of research and a lot of digging when it comes to the transfer market. And we've been a little bit more digging into it over the last 2 to 3 years to try to identify those players that we feel can come in our program and mesh with the current guys. But like Coach said, I mean, there's some calculated risks that that has to be taken, but you just got to kind of sit down and look at the situation and see if it's either worth it, or if, you know, you're dealing with 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds that sometimes make mistakes. And like Coach said, is this a one-time offense, or is this a reoccurring issue? But to be honest with you, we're kind of getting a little bit more heavy in the transfer market over these last few years. But I think it comes down to doing your research and your due diligence, to reaching out to the right people, to making sure that it's a right fit.
Yes, sir. Coach Jones.
I'll add on to what Coach Fairley said about culture wins. And it's not just the culture in your program, though, that I'm referring to. Is in your recruiting process, we spend a lot of time trying to recruit kids coming out of good cultures. We like to recruit programs. We like to recruit programs that are winning at a high level, that are playing in a lot of big games, that have quite a few Division I or high level, you know, even if they're Division II guys that are going to college to play. So kids understand how they could play with dudes. We don't have many transfers because we work really hard on relationships. And so we haven't had, but we had one kid transfer a few years ago. And, you know, I sat down with him, and I could tell he was being a little unhappy one time. I said, my man, I said, you know, here's what you're struggling with. I said, and we signed you. He said, when you were in high school, you didn't know how to play with other dudes. You weren't just a dude, you were the only dude. And so when he was the only dude on the team, and now he's coming in, he's playing with several other guys that are potential NBA draft picks, he was struggling on how to find a way to make himself valuable and get the same shine that he had when he was the only dude on the team. And a lot of kids struggle with that. So when you can get kids that are already kind of acclimated to winning and playing with other good players on the floor, that helps their acclimation in the college dynamic in that locker room a lot easier. We also talk a lot about, we kind of coined the phrase, we want to recruit high-level, high-character gym rats. But again, as Coach Hamilton also said, he said, we're not just going to look for all the goody two-shoes. He said, if we only help the kids that are already going to make it, you know, our mission in life of being society changers doesn't mean much. So, you know, he'll take a guy with a little rough edges, but, you know, Coach Hamilton's a guy that he tells it, look, said, I came from rough edges, and I want to share that experience with kids on our team. We just got to make sure we understand that this is a kid that wants help. So as we're going through that recruiting process, whether it's a high school kid, a JUCO transfer, or a 4-year transfer, and we'll ask hard questions to try to find out if he really wants to be coached, if he really wants to change, because you can't change people unless they want to change first, and they want your help. So we've been very selective. I think in the last 10 years, I think we've had 6 4-year transfers. A couple of them are grad transfers. We've had much more junior college transfers than we've had 4-year transfers, and they've all been great fits for our roster, and they've been great fits for the dynamic of what we try to do from a leadership perspective in our coach-player relationships.
Got you. Let's talk about.
I did want to add one more thing real fast.
Sure, no problem.
One other thing that has been a really good common theme for us is circling back on people. Like, one thing about this portal, this rise in this portal, guys you missed the first time, or guys you knew that kind of got too good early on for you to get, that fall back to you. Our last year's leading scorer was somebody we all knew. It's a local kid, but kind of got a little wayward in his career path, circles back here. Guy that just joined our staff that was pretty much an all-everything guy for us. When our coaches coached him in high school, he goes away to Rob Morris, comes back to us. So, and it's like been a few others like that. So that's another thing that helps. Like, somebody you knew before and they come back available, it's like circling back. That's another big thing. I missed it, forgot to mention that earlier, but I had to throw that in there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it all comes down to relationships at the end of the day. You know, all 3 of you are recruiting, you know, out here. Talk about what the day-to-day conversations with recruits kind of sound like. You know, I'm sure you're not really asking them what the weather's all about, but, you know, talk about that progression, you know, as the relationships goes on. Maybe you don't ask more personal stuff until later, but, you know, what do those day-to-day conversations sound like, or what should they sound like? We'll start with Lenny.
I mean, they're people. At the end of the day, they're people just like us. Like, they might be just a little younger. So you almost make it personable. Like, So as funny as it says, yeah, sometimes I will ask, how's the weather? Where you at? Like, you learn something about it. Like, so, I mean, obviously you ask the basketball things, because I mean, there's no secret, that's why we there. But you get to know them just on a general basis. It's just like a kid you see every day walking around, maybe. You just learn them like that. And I think when you do those kind of things, it resonates more. And I think it also helps when I said before about how doubling back, like you have that kind of relationship with somebody in general. You think of it as more, it's not just you're recruiting just so they can play for you, but you might end up giving them a gym in life. You know what I'm saying? Like, they might remember something from a conversation they had with you that was personal that helps them. And I mean, that all pays dividends as well.
Sure. Mo?
Yeah, I think it comes down to building genuine, authentic relationships. Like Coach mentioned, right? You know, they're people. And I forgot what Coach said it, but someone said basically, you know, rules without relationship causes rebellion, right? So I want to get to know you as a person. I want to build a relationship with you. You know, and I don't have to know about, you know, your girlfriend's name and your adult, but I want to know who you are as a person. I want to coach you first as a person before as a player, because now when things get tough and you get to campus and we're grinding, right? You know, I can kind of come at you and I can get at you with you understanding that, like, we have a relationship, right? It's not like, damn, coach is really on me. Like, he don't like me. He hate me. Like, what's going on? It's no, coach wants the best for me and he's going to push me to the best of my abilities and for me to reach my potential. So I'm real big on relationships. Like, you know, one of my top recruits now, his team is right now is #1 in the state of New York for football. So we talk a lot about him being the starting quarterback and football and you know, proms and just him, individual peoples and bills and NFL and a little bit of everything for the most part. And it's not strictly just, you know, basketball in Cortland and basketball. It's, you know, I want to know who you is as a person. You know, what are your likes? What are your dislikes? What pisses you off? What gets under your skin? And it's authentic. I'm not asking these questions and trying to get to know you just to be fake and for you to come to Cortland. You know, I want to build those authentic relationships. That kind of goes a long way.
Yeah, you should definitely talk about the Bills more with your recruits. I think you'd have a little more success as the best football team in the area. He's a Steelers fan, unfortunately, so we'll pray for him there. Coach Jones, you got anything on this?
I do, because I think in our society today, I think one of the biggest things you have to do with recruits is you got to get them to talk. And because nowadays, a lot of the younger generation, they don't really, I don't know if they're intimidated by it or they don't practice it enough because of the technology. But you got to get them to speak and have conversation with you. But they're not going to do it long like some of the old days. You got to learn how to get down on a 5 to 8 minute phone conversation and get them to talk and listen. And that starts with you being a good listener as a recruiter, as you talk to their coaches, you talk to their parents, you talk to the people around them in their circle, let them talk to and be an avid note taker while you're taking notes, because they'll tell you about the kid. And then when you talk to the kid, now you bring up topics that you've heard from them and they start, well, how does coach know this about me? And they start talking, they start trusting you a little bit because they feel like they know that you know them already. Same thing when you go evaluate them when you play. One of the things I like to get, you know, I think kids, when they start realizing you have some basketball expertise, you go watch them play, you start, hey, what do you think your strengths, your weaknesses? How do you think you played today? And then you give them some feedback that they see as tangible that really can help them. I think they start developing a capability of trusting you, because relationships all boil down to that one word is trust. Is getting there. And then you got the things you got to kind of diffuse. Like when I recruit kids from Archbishop Spalding, I've got to talk to the kids about, now that assistant coach at Archbishop Spalding that's a fan of a team in our league, how do y'all deal with that? You know, I don't want him screwing up our recruitment because he's a fan of a team in our league. So we're able to have to try to shut that out real quick whenever we recruit a Spalding kid.
Oh man, I knew it was coming at some point. Yeah. So let's move on to kind of evaluating, and you know, how do you balance recruiting two guys at the same position when you have a better chance at the lower rated player? So, you know, I'm recruiting, you know, Maurice, Kearney and Aaron Proya, and Aaron Proy is the better player, but I have a better shot, at Maurice Kearney. I mean, obviously, hey. I didn't say I scored on you in the post, but I did guard you in the post pretty well, Cortland. So, talk about, because you are talking to these recruits daily, and I'm sure at some point that comes up. So how do you navigate those conversations, Coach Lenny?
Honestly, we were transparent about like nobody signed, so it's still available. Like, we're transparent about that. Like, until somebody's actually logged in, we're not gonna, like, we don't really bring it up like, oh, we got this guy and this guy, who's gonna come in. Like, it's more so like the opportunity's there. If you want it, take it. I mean, you're gonna shoot your shot at a better guy, but at the same time, you're also looking at how the fit happens. I mean, we had it before I took the job, I was still a student manager. We had the situation with basically a guy, Joe, that's was a most outstanding player last year. So it came down between him and another guard. And like the other guard, he's good athlete, good size, everything. But you saw the traits in Joe that was going to transfer. Like, he showed up in every big game there was, like every single one. And then the other guy, his character was a little bit better. Maybe a little bit better, like it was more visible, like fitting what we would like. So, it was kind of like a half and half, and we ended up getting Joe, and, kind of we was cool with our decision. But sometimes they'll ax it out for you. They'll make the decision for you. Like, they might just go in a different direction and just tell you off the rip. But otherwise, you kind of just keep going with what you're going with until it comes to that pass. Like, you can't really rule out one or the other, you try not to favor one or the other.
Gotcha.
I was saying, like, nothing is, we don't guarantee anything and we don't promise anything. But if we're looking and recruiting two kids that play the same position, and they're pretty close, the little intangible things that we feel that may, one kid may be able to come and gel well with our returning guys or the other guys that we have coming in, or one may be a little bit better situated academically, and there may be a little bit less hand holding. So we try to look at little things that may differ, that may separate the two. But the common theme is really the opportunity to play for minutes, an opportunity to play in our program, and the rest.
He's having a real hard time there. Go ahead, Coach Jones.
I'm a big believer in what Coach Fairley said as well on transparency. At our level, we recruit a lot of players, and I know Coach does too at Norfolk State. Those guys have done a great job. We were next to each other in the bubble back in March.
I love for them guys over at FSU.
And it's great to see the story. We had the legendary Derek Coles working our administration office at one time. Norfolk State's biggest fan. So, but transparency is important, because you can't have trust in your program if you don't have honesty. And I'm very upfront with kids. Now we don't, like, the first time we talk to a kid, we don't offer a kid the first time we talk to a kid. We're going to have a relationship to really get to know if we like the personality, if we like the family dynamics, if we like that we're hearing that they're really going to consider saying yes to us. We might know we're not expecting them to say yes to us immediately on the phone. So we want to get to the point where we're not just wasting man hours by just throwing offers out there and chasing everybody and trying to get there. But I'll tell kids, I said, look, the hardest decision you're going to have to make in life is who you're going to marry and what school you're going to be to, who you're going to commit to, because none of us going to be 100% absolutely can't miss without a chance of being a mistake. I said, but you got to understand this. The second best answer we can get from you is no. If you're not interested, you can let us know. We can handle rejection. We'll find somebody. I said, and I'll tell guys, we got a really good staff. I mean, we're really experienced. We got dudes on our staff that can really recruit. And I'll say, look, we got you on the board. You're at the top. We're offering you a scholarship. Coach Hamilton's going to be on the Zoom. He's coming to your house, whatever. We're going to offer you. I said, but the other coaches are offering people too, and they're very good at what they do. And I said, so if they come back and say this kid wants to come, maybe we'll say you got the right of first refusal, but we're not gonna hold things forever in the process. And great story we had a kid 6 or 7 years ago. Mom went to Florida State, dad went to Florida State, his sister was going to Florida State at the time, he was a really good player down in Orlando. He's been up numerous times on unofficial visits. You know, we offer him a scholarship. He says, well, Coach, I really want to go visit and visit and visit. And I said, well, you need to understand, if somebody else says they want to come now, no matter that you're a Florida State legacy type kid, we're going to go. And a week later, Terrence Mann calls CY on our staff and commits before he takes an official visit, which worked out pretty good for us. Terrence Mann was a pretty good player for us. Yeah. And so I guess that's what God wanted us to have. I had to call the kid back and said, I'm sorry, we're no longer involved because, like I told you, this young man, Terrence Mann, is committed to us, and we don't have another spot available for your position. So, you know, they have to. And I told you up front how honest we were going to be. We're not going to try to fake you out. We're not going to sell you wooden nickels. We're going to tell you how it is, what it is, and we're going to build a role for you when you get here. And you got to trust us at some point, or trust somebody else.
I feel like he's currently on the Knicks. Yeah. Good dude.
Clippers.
All right. Clippers now. Yeah, got
the high-speed Wi-Fi himself. And CY's primary example.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Yes, sir. Talk about the timing of offers. You know, do you have a time frame when you need to wrap up the senior recruiting class every year? You know, how does that fluctuate? How do you balance waiting for a top recruit versus missing out on a good program player that's going to contribute for 3 to 4 years? Go ahead, Lenny.
Go back to the second part of the question one more time.
How do you balance waiting for a top recruit versus missing out on good program players? You know, because they're the program guys, you know, you can get, but you know, if you sit out waiting on, you know, 5-star Aaron Proy, you might miss out on, you know, 3-star Maurice Kearney that's going to build your program.
I mean, that side of it's probably more on Coach Jones' side than us. Us, it's like, I mean, obviously we try to get stuff done quickly, but we've had people late. We've gotten people late. Like, might have had somebody after summer workouts before, if I'm not mistaken, or getting them in after summer workouts.
Okay.
So, but that was also because somebody left late.
Yeah.
Ideally, you want to try to get that wrapped up early, like late in the spring, to be honest with you. Like for us it's different because of the moving and shaking that goes on. And at our level, you gotta move a little differently.
Yep.
So it ain't really so much, we ain't so much pressing the early period as much as maybe somebody in Coach Jones' conference would be. We try to get somebody, if we got somebody good, really, really good early that we can get, we're going to try to get them. The idea. But we've never really been the type to wait people out like that much either.
Got you. Mo?
For us, I think we try to identify, like, you know, on our recruiting board, who's the A guy, who's the B guy, who's the C guy. You know, your C guys are, you know, if you give them attention and you basically say you want them, those are the guys that are going to jump on it. Hey, I'm coming to Cortland. I applied. I'm accepted. I'm depositing tonight. Your B guys are guys that are going to be, you know, we think that you can play for us. You might not be able to play for us as a freshman, but you're going to help build our program and you're going to be a great culture guy. And we see you really playing maybe towards the end of your sophomore year, junior year, you're probably going to be a starter. We spend a lot of time with those guys. And then your A guys are typically for us, like I said, you know, Aaron, in our conference and the SUNYAC, typically teams that win our league have those guys that could have played Division II at a really good Division II, are those borderline D2, D3 guys. So,
yep.
Unfortunately, everybody thinks there's a scholarship player. So no one thinks that they're a Division III guy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Guys, you know, they all think that D2 or low major D1 scholarship is coming. So we'll wait around a little bit because, you know, we kind of know, like, hey, this kid, you know, he's probably going to fall to us. So we keep that line of communication open, but letting them know that, hey, listen, you know, there's a couple other guys that we are recruiting and are looking at that if they jump on it, you know, we're going to have to end this recruiting process. And we kind of go from there. But we go as late as, you know, the deposit date of May 1st for us. And we've been able to actually get guys early summer. But I think it's just trying to find that balance of how much time and energy you're putting on, you know, for us, the A, B, or C guy.
Got you. Coach Jones?
Well, when you get with us and you work with Coach Hamilton as assistant coaches, our timeline is sometimes based on coach figuring out who he really wants, because he overanalyzes, because he's such a powerful idea thinking kind of guy. His brain never shuts off. So I can tell you story after story. When I first started recruiting for him at the University of Miami, I'm recruiting John Salmons all year. And John Salmons turned out to be a first-round draft pick and a 13-year NBA player, really good player. And so when I head coach watch him in the summer, I just don't know if he's tough enough. I just keep recruiting him because I believe in him. Go all the way through. We're in the Big East at the time. We go up to play Villanova on a Saturday. After our team meetings at the hotel, John's playing a home high school game that night. I get a rental car. I take Coach out to watch him play. We watch the game. Coach is great. He does all the stuff, saying hello to the parents, the coaches, and all that kind of stuff, as he always is. We're walking in the parking lot. I said, Coach, what do you think? He said, I just don't play hard enough. I said, Coach, the other team had all 6-foot white guys, and they were playing every delay game they ever invented in the history of basketball. And they were holding, I think this game was like 36-28, something like that for the game. So he had no shot to play hard because those teams was holding the ball, but he made every winning decision. We can find better. I think we got to find better. But I just kept recruiting him. And all of a sudden, as we get late in the spring, I go to Coach. I say, look, Coach, if we bring John Salmons on a visit and he has a good visit, I'm pretty confident he's going to commit. And he said, I don't know. So he goes back to his office back before we had cell phones. He used to always like to speak on his landline speakerphone. So he calls one of his, as he calls them, soldiers in the business. It's a college coach he's playing with at another program. Mm-hmm. He calls again. I can hear him because from my office, the doors are open. He says, hey, man, what you know about this boy in Philadelphia? And the guy says, you talking about the Salmons kid? He said, yeah. He said, can you get him? And Coach says, my sister says we can get him if we bring him and has a good visit. And his buddy says, you a fool, and hung the phone up on him. Here comes Coach running down the office to me and said, this is Tuesday now. Can we get him here Thursday night on a visit? I said, Coach, you're killing me. So I tell all young coaches when they're trying to get into this business, your job as an assistant coach is addition. The head coach's job is subtraction. So if he don't like them, you still got to either hold on or you go find somebody else to keep going from. You got to keep bringing addition to the table. And so we prefer to, if we can get the bulk of our recruiting class done in the fall, that's advantageous at our level because you got to get relationships with the high level kids early if you're going to have a chance of getting them. You can't come in really late on those guys and have a chance. You got to be able to evaluate those. So if we can get ahead a little bit, it makes our recruiting efforts much more productive. But you also, in our timeline, as Coach says this all the time, if we're going to be recruiting some of these high level guys that want to be, he calls it America's guest, and they want to go see every blue blood. That's how CY kind of coined the phrase, and they've taken it into a marketing thing for our team. Is we'll never be a blue blood, but we're a new blood kind of deal. We're the new bloods in the deal, so we play off of that. But again, Coach says if we're going to have these kids that want to take all 5 visits in the junior year, 5 visits in the senior year, and see everybody in the country, so we're probably not going to win that battle. So again, it goes back to just having a feel and just continuing to add people that you feel you can win with, and that's part of recruiting is whoever's leaving, can we find somebody that's as good or better than who's leaving so our program keeps evolving into a stronger and stronger organization.
2 more questions, and I'll get you out of here. I know you guys have given me a lot of your time. I appreciate it. Talk about one of your recruiting misses and what it taught you about the game. Lenny?
One thing I will say is it's happened twice where it was somebody I saw. I thought they was pretty good. I felt pretty good about them, but wasn't sure how I fit here. And I probably should have pressed harder on it. Mm-hmm. Turns out a year later, it's the kid ends up being every bit, if not better. And it's you got to trust your gut. If you're sure, if you're sure on it, just stick with it. Stick to it. Even if it doesn't look all the way right, then kind of project a little bit. So that's one of the early things I'm kind of learning.
Gotcha.
You're sure, you know what it looks like, you know what it's supposed to look like, and you know what things are supposed to look like from players you have here. If it fits, trust it.
Mo?
Yeah, I think for me is kind of what Coach just said, piggybacking is like we talk about it a lot with our guys, like in practice and games, is the eye in the sky does not lie, right? So, hey, coach, I was in help side. Nope. All right, let's go back to the film. But same thing in recruiting, right? And you got to trust your eyes. You got to trust your gut. I think for me, heading into my 8th year as an assistant, I used to be so emotionally attached where, like, if I missed on a kid or a kid called me and, hey, coach, thank you for everything. I decided to commit to X, Y, and Z. You know, my wife used to get on me. She still does every now and then. But I used to be so hurt. I built a relationship. And then I've learned through the years that it's a part of the game. You're not going to get everyone that you want, and you're not going to get everyone that you build relationships with. But for me, is an experience or a loss. There were probably 2 years ago. 2 years ago, myself and our other assistant at the time, Coach Kearney, we missed out on, I think, 4 out of 5 kids that we could have sworn that were going to come to Cortland. And we thought they were good for our program, and we could have sworn that, hey, we watched these kids play a lot. We spent a lot of time and energy, and they decided to go elsewhere. And 3 out of the 4 of them actually turned out not to be, I guess, as good as we thought they were, or kind of showed a little bit different character at the schools that they went to. So it was a kind of a breath of fresh air where we're like, all right, it didn't work out, but maybe it didn't work out for the better good of us. But I think the biggest thing that I've learned in the process and missing on kids was I used to get so emotionally attached, where now I understand that it's a part of the game.
Yes, sir. Coach Jones?
Coach Mo, that's a great point, because a lot of times as assistant coaches, our wins and losses come more emotionally in the recruiting game than when you get to the actual basketball games. Because you get so involved and you put so much time and energy and your personality into the recruiting process. And I know we've been through one. I'm not going to bring the young man's name up, but he was a legacy kid. That the one thing I learned about the situation is when they won't go ahead and publicly say what they're going to do, even if they're a legacy kid, you got to go ahead and move on and find somebody else. Because the one thing we did is we trusted the family that. They were going to handle it their way, but the recruitment was going to go through Tallahassee. And until 5 minutes before the press conference, we thought the kid was coming to us from what they told us. And then they announced to another school. So you never allow yourself to get in that situation where you get in blind trust with anybody in a decision like this. No matter how close you think you are with people, you got to get them to the finish line, or you got to find somebody who will get to the finish line. But you also got to be able to kind of piggyback on what Coach Fairley was saying too. As an assistant, you need to see the kid you're taking to your head coach in enough settings that you're trusting your eyes, because you got to be real careful when you take your head coach for the first time to see a kid that you believe in. And I learned that from Coach Hamilton, because I always bring that back on him. When I first joined him, he talked about, when he was working for Coach Hall at Kentucky, and he took Coach Hall to see Buck Williams play for the first time. He put like 2 years of work in on Buck Williams, the great Maryland player. He was a great NBA player. They're sitting there watching the game, and Buck's got like 30 rebounds in a high school game. And Joe Hall's looking at Coach Hamilton and saying, well, can he put it on the floor and make a pull-up jump shot? And Leonard, we're not going to get Buck Williams because I can't get Coach to believe in him. And obviously they didn't get him. And so every time you take Coach to see somebody, Coach, what do you think? You got to look at it and say, I'll kiddingly call him Coach Hall. So you're getting just like him, Coach. Just listen to the assistants and trust me and Coach CY and Coach Smith. We got pretty good track records on our staff. So sometimes those head coaches, they start thinking about, especially coaches will always say, well, I can't look at that kid and think we're going to beat North Carolina or Duke or Louisville. It was like, Coach, they're not going to be on our campus for 18 more months. Let's kind of project how they're going to be. So you got to make sure you understand your head coach and how he's seeing things, the pace he's going at, and that you're confident that you can stand up for that kid and say, Coach, he's good enough for us, and he'll make us. I had a breakthrough yesterday. We had a kid on an unofficial visit yesterday, and Coach hadn't seen him play. I said, Coach, this one can play. I've already seen him enough time. He said, well, that's all I need to know this time. And I said, thanks a lot, Coach Hall. He started laughing. So I guess I had a breakthrough yesterday. Maybe after 26 years, he's going to believe me on a first evaluation.
Glad you finally got there. All right. Last question. Anyone can take this because you might have to think about it for a second. So give me your best recruiting story.
Okay, so I give a light one from kid that I ended up coaching my first year. So it was a kid, Derek Jamerson, led the nation in 3-point shooting at like 25 on Alabama when we beat them. So what happened with him? Everything just aligned like perfectly on his, because it was like wasn't a whole lot going on with him. He's kind of hitting in JUCO, but in JUCO he's hitting like 120 something trays at a good percentage or whatever. So we actually played Bowling Green coming in that year. He just randomly popped up at a game, popped by the hotel, whatever. Before that, his visit was homecoming. So, you know, an HBCU homecoming is a one-of-a-kind experience. And there was another concert he caught that weekend too. Like, so the funny thing was, he goes to visit, does that, but then can't hit a broadside of a barn in the workout the next day. I didn't even find that out until last week, because I wasn't there like during his workout, and I was like, damn, we almost didn't have him. But he ends up committing. I mean, he was kind of already immersed in everything before he came, and then, you know, the rest was history. So it was just one of those, the stars just kind of aligned perfectly for it.
Got you.
We got another shooter. We got another shooter now, just like the same way he came to Spartan Madness.
There you go. Mo?
I got one. So during the spring and the summer, I like to make a little bit extra money by refereeing. So I referee in a men's league in Binghamton. That's about, 45, 50 minutes for me. So my coworker and I, we referee this men's league, about three times a week. And it was one time we were refereeing, and it was this one kid. I mean, he was killing. Like, I mean, all of 6'6", lefty, big body. And so I'm just thinking to myself, like, damn, what if this kid had any, years of eligibility left? And then just so happened, the guy that runs the league, he knows I coach at Cortland. He goes, "Hey, Coach Mo, like, I want, do you know this kid has 2 years of eligibility left?" And I'm like, "There's no way." And they're like, "Yeah, but he's about 25 years old, and he might have a kid, or so I'm not too sure." And I said, "Man, listen, right? Like Coach Jones said, man, if you're only looking at the kids that don't need help, you're not really doing this thing for the right reason." So, we're always looking in this business trying to just trying to help the kids that need the help. But this was a unique situation. So I introduced myself to I don't want to say the kid, he's a young man, adult. And he goes, "Yeah, man, I went to a school out in New Mexico, out of high school, Division II, didn't work out. Then I went to a junior college for a year and a half. And, I got 2 years left, but I haven't been to school in the last 4 years." I go, "Listen, we're about 45 minutes away. Come check us out, and then we're going to go from there." And he said, "Coach, I don't know, man. Like, I haven't been to school in a couple of years. I don't know if I can do it." And I said, "Listen, I just watched you play in this men's league. I know it's not the same, but I think you can come, and I think it'll be a great situation." So next thing you know, we've kind of fast forwarded. He's one of our seniors this year, and he was an all league player for us last year. He'll be 27. He'll be 27 in January. And it was one of those situations where, like Coach said, the stars aligned and it worked out. And his mother, super appreciative of us giving her son the opportunity. He's going to graduate and walk across the stage, hopefully, in this upcoming spring. And he'll have the opportunity to be a Player of the Year candidate for us this year. But, I was thankfully that I was refereeing in a men's league and was there and had the opportunity to meet the young man, and everything has worked out.
Absolutely. That's dope, man. That's dope. Coach Jones, you got anything?
I'll finish up my participation. One was kind of a funny one. We always rag Coach Young on our staff about, because as Coach Fairley knows, CY's, he makes coffee nervous. You know, he's one of them guys that you're supposed to drink coffee to get your nerves up. He makes coffee nervous because he's always going. He's always got a story to tell. He's always trying to figure out how to get an angle on somebody. And so when he was a young whippersnapper at Jacksonville University, we were at the University of Miami toward the end of our career before Coach Hamilton goes to take the Washington Wizards job. And CY likes to think he controls the 305 down there because he played at Miami, Carroll City, and all that stuff. So there was a player down there that's kind of falling behind the scenes. Nobody was really recruiting him. Wasn't one of the premier competitive high schools down there. And his name was James Jones. You may have heard of him. Played in the NBA for a long time. He was general manager of Phoenix Suns. So CY thinks he's out slicking everybody and going to have a private workout over at James's high school and real early one morning. And he don't know that Coach Hamilton already got him out slick. And so CY coming out thinking he got to have his one. He gonna be the only guy in the gym. He walk in there, Coach Hamilton and I sitting on the front row. Before he walks in the gym, he says, "Oh man, I'm screwed. I ain't gonna go get this boy." And he was right. We got James to commit the next week. So he thought he was out playing, go get him a high major player and come in our backyard because he grew up there. So we always have to keep CY humble a little bit because he always making things popping and happening. He's a one-man HBCU homecoming by himself. You know that, Coach Fairley.
Man, that man had me weak as hell the whole tournament. We was in the room next to y'all.
There's one story. Oh, go ahead.
And on the other side, kind of a serious thing to talk about what Coach Mo was talking about. You know, Coach Hamilton learned this from his days at Kentucky. Coach Hall used to always demand that. He demands that of us is if somebody reaches out to us about a player, we need to give them respect and at least do our diligence to check on it. And the best story I can tell you about that with Coach is back in 2008 or 9, there was and he's talking about referee, and there was an ACC referee went to play, you know, around our country during the spring and summer. They have military-based tournaments for all the military bases. And one referee called 4 coaches he liked in the ACC and said, "Hey, there's this one dude that's playing. He's like 6'10". He can play in the ACC." And there wasn't but one coach that bothered to take that referee's information and call, and that was Leonard Hamilton. He went out and saw the kid work out at his base. He said, "When you get out, we'll help you get into junior college, and we want you to come to Florida State," because the kid had been a GED. And the kid ended up being Bernard James, who was been in the military for 6 years, an Air Force veteran, ended up being a fabulous player for us, helped us win our first ACC championship because Coach took the time to follow up on a phone call, went to that military base, watched the kid work out when most people wouldn't do that because, oh, this kid can't play. He didn't even play high school basketball. And Bernard came in and became one of the greatest representatives. He got a major award from the ACC for courage for his because he did 2 tours in Afghanistan, and just a guy that really impacted our program as a leader. And I tell our players all the time, Bernard was a leader because he was a great follower by how he learned how to organize himself in the military. And so as you're recruiting, I think that's one of the biggest things you can do is always respect people who reach out to you. And I know we get more and more of them because technology gets to us easier nowadays, but you never know who that Bernard James is you're going to find that can impact your program the way Bernard did for us.
NBA player too.
Yeah.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, he was with the Mavs for a bit. Yeah, I always remember
3 years.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I got to send you out on this one.
Oh, please do.
I'm recruiting a kid in our state one year, and I mean we're right down to the end of it. We think we're getting him, and his decision maker, the night before he's making decisions, Coach, he's going to go to the other school because it's a life-changing. It's going to be a life-changing decision for him. I said, "What do you mean it's a life-changing decision? He ain't going to church. He's going to college." And of course, he was going to your favorite school, Coach Proya. So I had to throw that out. I lost the kid because it's a life-changing experience. So I'm gonna let you win on that one tonight. All right.
Oh Lord. Oh,
that's
man.
a true story. The guy said we're going to pick the other school because it's a life-changing experience. I said, "You're not going to church. You go to church to change your life."
I'm using that church line for sure down the line. All right, fellas. Let the people know where they can find you on social media. Let's start with Leonard.
Well, Coach Len, NSU. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram by that. I guess Facebook's my name, Leonard Fairley right now. I think those the main two. I don't be on Snapchat.
You don't want anyone adding you on Facebook anyways. Mo?
Mo Kearney. You can find me on Twitter at mkearney92, and I'm on Instagram as just Mo30, M2Os3Es30. That's it.
Gotta get you to change that Instagram one day to something more.
Yeah, I think I might change it as soon as I get to Cortland in about another hour and a half.
There you go. We guilted you into it. Coach Jones.
Well, I'm an at Coach Stan Jones, just all one word. I just do Twitter and Facebook because I get in CY's way on Instagram, so I just let him have that over there.
Got you. Well, real quick, as a part of every episode, I let the people kind of turn the tables and ask me one question. So is there any burning non-related, non-UNC flag in my room related question that y'all have for me?
I'll ask who's the recruiting rankings person between you and Coach Kearney on the 5-star versus the 3-star? Who made those rankings up?
That's a very good question.
Listen. That was a unanimous decision by the party of one, Aaron Froy, that put that together. No, I was. Go ahead, Mo.
Better basketball player now than when you saw me at court. I said I'm a way better basketball player now than when you saw me at court.
Listen, the same is true for me. The same is definitely true for me. All right, appreciate y'all. Keep in touch and we'll talk soon.
Yes, sir. Nice to meet you guys. Good luck this year.